Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on some reels that a viewer, Matt from San Francisco, sent to me. We have two that look pretty similar, but they're not. One of them is a South Bend, this one is the South Bend, and this one is the Pflueger Rocket, and they have a lot of similarities to them in terms of look and appearance, but they are different reels. So we're going to take these apart and we'll show you what a classic level wind reel looks like and how to service this, and we'll introduce you to the older style of the level wind reels as we go about that. Now I'm not going to do both of them on the same video, but we are going to start with the Pflueger Rocket, and we'll start by taking that apart and then working on the internals of this one. So this one works nicely to begin with, so our important part here is just to tune this up, make sure everything's working, and make sure that it's well lubricated to continue. So we're going to start by taking off the externals, and that starts with the handle nut. And you'll notice a couple of things as we're doing this. One of them is that I have a protective glove on my hand. And the other is that I use a parts tray, and those always capture all the pieces and parts so that we know as we go to reassemble exactly where those parts are. And the other thing you won't notice, but it's important to this nonetheless, is that I am taking pictures of this, and I recommend that you take pictures as you do the basic disassembly and the like for your reels as well. The reason for that is if you get stuck along the way, for example, if there were some washers in here or the like, and you reached into your parts tray and you didn't recognize where that piece or part came from, that's the answer to the question. It's how to get the pieces and parts back together again. We have cross posts for the reel seats. They're held on by small screws, so let's go ahead and take these out. Now, one of the things I usually like to do on a reel like this is go pull a schematic, but I couldn't find the schematic quickly. I'm sure they're out there, but I just didn't have the time. The other thing I like to do is to make sure that these side plate screws are all the same. So we're working on that right now. I'm going to lay these next to each other, and if I notice that there's one or more of these that is long or short, then we'll change the sequence of this. I'm just putting them in my tray. And right now the first thing I notice is that there is a little bit of difference here. Not enough that it matters. But nonetheless, you want to make sure that you know where these go when you go to return the reel. So these are looking about the same size now. It might just have been a discoloration on the one. So I use an electrician's screwdriver here. The electrician's screwdriver has a rubber shaft on it. The purpose of that shaft has always been to stop a spark if you hit a live wire inside of a box, but to me it's a nice extra grip here. And this is the first time the small screws. We have the small screws here at the level wind mechanism. So duly noted that when we go to reinstall, these two small ones come from there. Okay, so those are the exterior pieces. We should be able to pull the cap off now. And the cap is a relatively uncomplicated reel. You'll notice from this that we have the anti-reverse dog mechanism here. That's controlled by this eccentric. And this is the way, when we go to reinstall, this is the way you're going to want it. You're going to want it backed off, because if you put it in this way, you have to mesh it with the teeth that are on the anti-reverse ratchet here, and it's always more difficult. So when you go to reinstall this, just come back and flip it over. This reel is clean inside. We don't need to do much. It was clean outside as well. I'm just going to grab a cotton swab here. Just take care of a little bit of that dirt. There's not much on there. And I'm going to put a drop of oil onto the eccentric and inside. And interestingly enough, we have a little oil mechanism here. If you didn't want to take your your side plate off to do this, you could pull that spring and you can oil through there. And that would get to, it'll get you here, and it'll also get you to your spool mechanism. We have a spool gear. Take that off. There's a fork side to it. The fork side goes in. We have a compression washer. We have a gear sleeve. We have the click ratchet. And then we have the main gear. And we have a gear shaft. And then we have the drive over here for the lever wind feature. So let's take a look and let's see what we got here from the drag washer standpoint. These are actually okay, and I'm always nervous about these because they are hard to find if you do need to replace them, but these seem to have been in good condition. Let's just go clean those up. They're a hard washer. Probably a leather, I'm not sure. We'll put a little bit of drag grease onto that. I'm just going to put it on the washer side of this to enable us to remount this. And this is an interesting one. This is like that Tidewater I had the other day. The drag washer assembly is underneath here onto the pinion shaft. So we'll reinstall this after we check the teeth. Teeth are in good condition. We're going to grab our grease brush. I'm going to use Penn Precision Reel Grease. I do tell you to use fishing reel grease when you're working on fishing reels. I got a question the other day. What's an acceptable alternative? My answer is there is none. For the price of fishing reel grease and oil, it doesn't make sense to try and substitute anything. And they're widely available now. You can get the greases right on Amazon or eBay or any of the fishing stores that you may frequent, Bass Pro or Cabela's or any of those. They all have the products available. Okay, I've lubed up the drive for the level wind. We're going to take the gear and reinstall that. Make sure that that meshes nicely. Next up then is that secondary washer. We'll put a little bit of grease onto the washer there. And the drag washer goes on. Then the click ratchet goes on. And that sits on the square side of the piece. And then the pressure washer goes on. Same thing we'll do here now. We're going to grab this, check the teeth, make sure that they're not chipped, broken, or injured in any way. Nice little piece of lubrication on that. The channel side of this goes down. And then just give it a spin. Just to make sure that everything is working fine. Okay, with that done, then this side can be put back together. Grab those side plate screws. Then we'll come over and we'll work on the spool side here just to make sure everything's right there. Now we noted we have two small screws here that belong on the face side of this. But essentially it's a fairly Straightforward design here. That's one of the reasons why it lasts as long as it does. And I wouldn't be surprised when we open up the south bend if it is an identical inside. It's just sometimes they shared manufacturing facilities and just trade named the reels. Sometimes it was more than that. And the only problem I've ever found with these reels mechanically is the issues involving the assembly of the level line guide. And these parts are almost impossible to get. A lot of times if the reel hasn't been taken care of, and this one certainly has been taken care of, but a lot of times if they haven't been taken care of, then the issues that surface are that the pawl freezes in the level line carrier, and there's nothing you can do at that point, which is unfortunate. I'll get over to the pawl in a moment. Just want to close this up first. Star drag would be next. I got some grease on here, so let's just grab a paper towel, get some of that grease off. Won't harm the metal, that's for sure, but cosmetically you'd like to do that. And you want to make sure that you're square on this, because you risk stripping it if you're not square. Now, this is spinning. The shaft is spinning. So it's okay to hold the shaft with the pliers, but make sure that you put protective padding around it. I'm going to use a kitchen scrubby for that purpose. The last thing you want to do is to damage the threads. So do just like we did here. And we'll tighten down all the way, put that handle on here, and then we'll give it a crank. With the anti-reverse off, you can hear that the click is the anti-reverse, which makes sense. Okay, then we'll just put this cap back on. Whoops, we got 2 more screws here. That's the beauty of a parts tray. You look in and you see that you've missed those 2, so let's go put those 2 little screws in and hold the side plate there. Then we'll go over the other side. That's one, here's the other. So now my parts tray is empty, which is a good thing because that means that you've reinstalled all the pieces and parts, or you have them laying on your workbench in front of you here, which is the cap nut for the handle and the handle itself. Okay, I'll put that handle back on. And the cap nut. And while I'm at it, we can put a drop of drop of oil into that center shaft there. Hand tighten as much as you can, and then just finish the rest of it off with the wrench. So let's pay attention then, or turn our attention to the other side after we service this. Talk about a couple of things on this. This is a level line reel. If you wanted to remove your spool, you have to remove 2 pieces. You have to, while this side plate is off, you have to pull the 2 screws from the level line feature and remove the wheel from this side of the housing. So it's not an easy task to do, but the whole piece needs to come out before you can take that side plate off. Since this is just a general servicing and lubrication, there's no broken pieces or parts, then the only thing we need to do here is to remove the cap on this side of the spool. This one calls for oil, so we're going to be true to what it's calling for, and we'll use a fishing reel oil just on the shaft of the spool. We'll place that back in here. I guess you could use grease if you liked. And then the other piece here, there's a grease fitting at the end of the level line worm gear. So let's take that off. And there is a little cup there, so let's go ahead and put some of that reel grease into that cup. You can reinstall that. And then the only other thing we have to do is put some oil onto the pawl. As I mentioned, if there's a weak point in this particular reel, it's that pawl assembly gets frozen, and that's usually because of lack of maintenance or rinsing off the reel at the end of the day or what have you. There's a little hold screw here. See if I can do this without taking it out completely. Usually if you take it out, yeah, just about there, you can flip this over, let it pivot. I had it and then I didn't. Let's back it out a little bit more. There you go. And here's your pawl underneath here. You don't have to remove the pawl. We'll just grab the grease again, or oil. I'm going to put oil on this worm gear. I don't like putting grease on worm gears because, particularly in the saltwater environments, it's just a way to collect the abrasives and eventually wear down the gears. So I like oil on the worm gears. I guess some folks like the grease. I just find that it's inviting trouble. Okay, there we go then. We have a little bit extra grease in there so we can back off the spool tensioner just a little bit. And there we go. So that's the Pflueger Rocket. That's how to take care of the internals, how to clean up the drag washers, how to lube underneath, how to take care of the worm drive and the pawl, and how to grease the side for the spool gear. There you go. All right, Matt, thanks for sending this one in. This has been fun, and the drags are holding nice and tight. I'm going to back the drags off. I always recommend, if you're not using a reel, back the drag off, and we'll get this one back to you. Stay tuned. We're going to do that South Bend reel in one of the next few videos. Thanks again for watching. This is Dennis, Second Chance Tackle. If you like the videos, please subscribe.